Hello, best of Trekkers! Here's a slightly unpopular opinion for you.
Some of Discovery isn't that bad.
And most of this block is some of the best the show has to offer. Thanks for joining me on Best of Trek, Worst of Trek. I'm your host, Dustin Wing. Going back to the house you grew up in at 175, The Voyage Home, or People of Earth. After getting the band back together, Discovery heads for Earth, the OG home of the Federation and Starfleet, only to find that 1,000 years is a long time. And of all places, Earth has seceded from the Federation, and there be no Starfleet here. This is one of the most classic Trek formulas in Discovery, as the time-weary crew helps patch up relations between an Earth colony on Titan, trying to survive by raiding from Earth, and neither knew the other was even the same race in a post-burn xenophobic galaxy. The episode is very light in contrast to the heavy stuff Disco sometimes gets into. This is the first episode you start to see the cracks forming in Tilly, Detmer, and the rest of the crew, as going 1,000 years in the future and leaving family behind is hard. The actress playing Andouille, whose name I'll butcher if I try to pronounce it, thought this would be her last acting role ever. But the production gave her a new lease on acting life. The ending with many of the human crew touching grass next to a tree from the former academy that's been there since all of them attended is this really nice break for both the characters and audience after so much tension at the end of Season 2 and now 3 episodes into Season 3. Showing its resolve at 174, Lines Drawn, or The Jem'Hadar. In the first episode where the Dominion makes their presence known, Ben takes Jake and Nog on a planetary survey for a school project. Quark somehow gets away with playing the race card against an Avery Brooks-played character to force himself onto the expedition also, only so he can try to sell Ben on the idea of playing merchandise ads on the station's monitors. While enduring some of Sisko's famous Jumba What's-It, Quark and Ben are caught in the middle of Jem'Hadar chasing a Vorta. Though at this time, they don't know this is all a ruse and get imprisoned. The Jem'Hadar simultaneously deliver a pad to DS9, letting them know they've destroyed the new Bajor colony and are holding Sisko hostage. In between, there's some filler where Jake and Nog get back to the runabout and try getting out of orbit without blowing themselves up, until the cavalry arrives, in the form of a Galaxy-class starship. While they do rescue Sisko, the USS Odyssey highlights some of the many design flaws and overconfidence in the build of the Galaxy-class, as the Jem'Hadar handily destroy it. The message from the Dominion has become clear. Stay out of the Gamma Quadrant. While the episode is paced kind of weird with a ton of microplots going on, they all converge into a satisfying introduction to arguably the Federation's greatest enemy. Finding things gone from bad to worse at 173, trust at a premium, or the war without, the war within. The previous episode culminated in Stamets finding Discovery's way home from the Mirror Universe. But in the twists and turns of the Mycelia network, he accidentally time travels 6 months in the future, and sorry to say, the Federation ain't looking too good in this war. Even though Discovery destroyed the Klingon ship of the dead, by not getting the cloaking data back to Starfleet, the Empire is running roughshod over the Federation. This becomes very evident when Admiral Cornwell shows up and command overrides the computer because as far as she knows, they found the wreckage of the ISS Discovery and thought everyone here was dead. After the misunderstanding is cleared up, we see firsthand what the Klingons are capable of. While visiting Starbase 1, the closest starbase to Earth, now taken over by Klingon raiding parties, Kat goes to ask her old friend in captivity, L'Rell, what it will take to stop the Klingons. And the answer is a show of force Starfleet isn't usually prepared to make. If they don't make the Klingons bend the knee, there may not be a Federation left. Good thing they now have the former Terran Emperor, Georgiou, who happens to be familiar with how to deal with the Klingons. and she's drafted into her Prime Universe counterpart's role heading into the final episode of Season 1. This is where Season 1 peaks for me and hits a bit of an anticlimax in the final resolution. But this episode is great setup and some amazing dialogue throughout. Getting an upgrade at 172. Galactic Pickers. Or Scavengers. Discovery receives a 32nd century refit and an A added to its registry. After some fun scenes getting used to the cool new interfaces and comm badge possibilities, Book's ship shows up on autopilot with the Queen herself Grudge, opening hailing frequencies. A log shows Book was trying to get info from Michael about the burn, but he got a little human trafficked into the Emerald Chain. Burnham and Georgiou go off Book despite orders to rescue him, which will cost her her first officer status in the not-too-distant future. What they find is a scrapyard with Booker and many others used for slave labor, processing materials. Georgiou liberates the camp and makes Osira's nephew in charge of it her next target. There's a ton of great action balanced out with wonderful dialogue, and just plain fun moments like a recurring joke about Linus playing with his personal transporter and ending up as the comic relief in deeply personal moments. All in all, one of Disco's best. Learning Loss at 171, The Evolved Automaton, or Drone. After an accident aboard the Delta Flyer during a proto-nebula survey, a beam-out fuses the Doctor's mobile emitter, which gives Bob Picardo a weird voyeur moment with B'Elanna in the sonic shower and a well-delivered joke about the early bird getting the gach. It turns out in transport, some of Seven's nanoprobes fused with the Doc's 29th century mobile emitter, which in turn assimilates the often-mentioned and unfortunate Ensign Mulcahy in his first on-screen appearance. The culmination of these things creates a 29th-ish century Borg to teach Seven the meaning of new connections, love, and the first feelings about being a mother before the Borg kids in the following season. This one tugs on your heartstrings as this drone matures from baby to adult, to eventually ending up sacrificing himself to save Voyager from the Collective, coming after his advanced tech. This is so well acted and shot in the cold clothes of Seven staring at a reflection of herself. The story of One is a classic sci-fi formula done well. Wandering into time shenanigans at 170, Not As It Seems, or Timescape. Another classic sci-fi feeling plot as half the main cast are headed back to the Enterprise on a runabout when they encounter pockets where time doesn't run linearly. When they finally make it to the Enterprise, they find it's seemingly in a battle with a Romulan warbird, but frozen in time. While exploring both vessels with some technobabble armbands, they find the Enterprise was working to evacuate the warbird that was undergoing problems in its warp core. But in the process, the Enterprise core is mid-breach. Using the non-linear nature of the area of space, they force time to move backwards, and are able to avoid a breach and uncover some higher beings trying to use the Romulan engine core as an artificial nest for its young, which has serious consequences for both the aliens and the Romulan vessel. It's another nice use of classic sci-fi tropes with some hilarious random moments throughout. A thoroughly enjoyable episode near the end of TNG's Season 6. Leaving your kid with the holo babysitter for way too long at 169. Innocence Challenged. Or Su'Kal. We set up the final stakes of arguably Disco's best season as we find the ship heading into a radiation-filled nightmare of a nebula to check on a more than 100-year-old Kelpian distress call. Booker ends up having to take his ship to reduce exposure, and Saru leaves his new first officer, Ensign Tilly, at the con, which in no way is a bad choice for Captain Saru. And even worse, Book couldn't leave Grudge on Disco when he's going into one of the most radioactive places in the galaxy. Burnham, Culber, and Saru end up beamed into one of the weirdest sci-fi landscapes we've ever seen in Trek, and one of the biggest reasons this episode ends up this high up the list. A holodeck running for the benefit of one lonely kid for over a century, and our heroes get new holo appearances. with Doug Jones getting a chance to peel back the layers of makeup and showing us the heart of a giant wandering around this ultimate Alice in Wonderland culmination this show loves so much. We learn that Disco A has had a cloaking device since its upgrade and shows it off when Osira shows up on the other side of the galaxy, till her command crew trigger a mini burn that gives away their position and gives command of Discovery to Osira. While the conclusion a few episodes later is kind of a weird resolution, the surreal nature of this one is in an episode that keeps moving from start to finish and earns it a top spot, leaving ethics by the wayside at 168 when push comes to shove. Or damage. Every captain seems to have a white whale moment, and Jonathan Archer's is probably the only justified one, as he finds himself stealing a warp coil from Not Damar and stranding the Illyrian crew to get home at Impulse. What this episode lacks in ethics, it makes up for in amazing cinematography. We also get a rare look at addiction as T'Pol is at the height of her need for Trellium D, despite being cut off from it in probably the most damaged but still flying ship we've ever seen in Trek history. They do end up making their 4 light-year away rendezvous with Degra, but only at great costs all around. This is one of the grayest areas Trek has ever tried to explore, and does it extremely well.
Ah, computer.
That program is available.
Thanks, Major. Thanks, Major.
Subjects are located inside a spatial distortion field.
Thanks, Major.
Warp core collapse in 10 seconds. Warning, 3 ships coming out of warp.
Thanks, Major.
Helm control activated.
Thanks, Major.
Specified energy systems have been initialized.
Thanks, Major.
Diagnostic in progress. Regeneration cycle incomplete.
Thanks, Major.